What if the oldest buildings in the Bible were not just symbols of faith, but true enigmas that challenge the laws of the modern science? Throughout the 4 centuries, archaeologists, engineers, and skeptics have grappled with stories considered by many to be myths. But what do when the evidence begin to coincide with the Holy Scriptures? Colossal ark built without technology, capable of withstanding a global flood. Walls impregnable, brought down not by weapons, but by sound. A temple covered in gold, standing in complete silence. A tower interrupted by an event that changed the history of the human language. These are not fables told by gullible generations. They are narratives that raise profound questions in the mind of any serious researcher. How was it built that in that time? Why do so many biblical accounts coincide with archaeological finds? What part of the history was forgotten or covered up? Today, you are going to embark on a journey that goes beyond logic. We will explore the most impressive works of art Bible, constructions that, even today, they leave scientists without words. And in the end, you may find yourself doing the same question as thousands have already been done. Are we facing divine miracles or evidence of a lost knowledge? Imagine receiving an order impossible to build a gigantic vessel in solid ground, unprecedented and all that, before a single drop of rain has fallen. This is how it begins the story of Noah. According to the Bible, God gives you handed over a detailed plan. An ark 300 cubits long, 50 wide and 30 high, which is equivalent to an impressive 135 meters long by 22 wide and 13 high. That is, in modern dimensions, almost the size of a cargo ship. The most intriguing thing is not only the scale of the work, but how it was built, without cranes, without steel, without power tools. Just gopher wood, shoe polish, and faith. For years, Noah worked under the disbelief and mockery of his time, but when the waters covered the earth, his ark became in the only refuge of life. Today, some researchers claim remains of a similar structure were found in Mount Ararat in Turkey. The images satellites, they show an elongated, semi-buried formation in the ice. Coincidence, natural formation, or the vestiges of the elderly vessel of the history? Skeptical scientists, they claim that there is no evidence conclusive. But others ask, how could an ancient culture design something so advanced? Beyond the wood and measurements, the ark represents something bigger, the faith transformed into action, an engineering guided not by calculations, but by obedience. And while experts debate his veracity, millions continue seeing in she is not just a symbol, but a warning. If the History dell'Arca challenges logic by its scale, the fall of Jericho defies by its impossibility. Jericho was a fortified, ancient, powerful city. Its walls were so thick that, according to some archaeological studies, allowed houses to be built on them. No one could penetrate them until he arrived an army without catapults, without battering rams, without visible weapons. The Israelites, led by Joshua, surrounded the city for 6 days, in silence. On the 7th day, after 7 turns, a blare of trumpets sounded, followed by a collective shout. Then the walls collapsed. Science has attempted to explain the phenomenon. Excavations royal in he place revealed that the walls, they fell inwards. They were not pushed from the outside, nor by siege. They simply collapsed. A theory suggests that an earthquake could have happened just in that moment, but exactly when they were heard the trumpets, exactly after 7 days of marching, exactly as the biblical text tells it. The skeptics they call coincidence, but even they admit the precision of the biblical story is disturbing. And beyond the physical explanation, the symbolic remains, sound as a weapon, the obedience as a strategy, and the faith as an invisible power. Jericho fell not by brute force, but by a conviction that resonated louder than any army. A wall built by human hands, torn down by divine will, was a miracle, a synchronicity between the earthly and the heavenly. Science still looking for a definitive answer. But perhaps Like its walls, certain certainties must fall so that new truths can get up. It wasn't just a building, it was a heavenly work of art, built to house the sacred, designed not by common hands, but under divine inspiration. The Temple of Solomon was not only impressive for its beauty, but by the details that still today baffle historians and architects. It was built without being heard the sound of a single hammer. The stones were carved out of the site and assembled with millimeter precision, as if everything already was planned by a higher intelligence, covered in cedar of Lebanon, adorned with sculptures of cherubs, palm trees and open flowers, and beyond, every corner, every detail, every column covered in pure gold. For 7 years, thousands of workers worked in his building, but the most sublime moment was when the Ark of the Covenant was placed in the most holy place. A dense cloud filled the temple, and the priests could not stand. It was, according to the stories, the presence of the God himself descending upon his dwelling. Many, they believe that the temple has completely disappeared, but others, they assure that even fragments remain buried under the Temple Mount Esplanade in Jerusalem. Where is it today, Solomon's temple? Was it really destroyed, without leave a trace, or was it hidden for reasons we don't yet understand? Beyond his physical location, its legacy remains, the searching for a place where the divine touched the human, a space where silence was reverence and gold, reflection of heavenly splendor. Solomon's temple was not just a building, it was a gateway between the sky and the land. Was a time in which the humanity spoke one language, one time in which there was no borders, nor cultural differences, nor communication barriers. And it was precisely that unity what triggered the breakup. The men, they said, "Let us build a city, and a tower whose top reaches to heaven. Thus we will do a name for us, and we will not be scattered throughout the earth." They were not seeking God, but to be like him. This is how it began, the building of the Tower of Babel, a structure colossal, erect with bricks baked and bitumen in the middle of the plain of Shinar. Some scholars believe that it was not a simple tower, but a ziggurat Mesopotamian, possibly he Etemenanki, temple dedicated to Marduk in Babylon. But according to the biblical story, God came down and, seeing the ambition of the man, confused their languages. No one understood each other. The project was abandoned, and the humanity dispersed. That moment marked a breaking point. Pride was arrested, arrogance dismantled word by word, and in his place was born the cultural and linguistic diversity that we know today. Was this a punishment or an opportunity for rediscovery? Archaeologists have remains of the found Etemenanki, confirming that an imposing tower existed in Babylon. But none excavation has been able to explain how suddenly multiple languages emerged. The Tower of Babel represents more than a construction failed. It is the reflection of the eternal desire of the man, reach the divine by its own means. And it reminds us that when the ego always rises too high, there is something or someone that brings us back down to earth. After decades of exile in Babylon, the town Jew returned to a devastated Jerusalem. Solomon's first temple had been reduced to rubble, and with she spiritual identity of an entire nation. But they didn't come back with gold or military power. They returned with faith. And with that faith, they began the reconstruction. The second temple was more modest. It had the splendor of the first, neither the Ark of the Covenant. Even thus, it was consecrated as a symbol of rebirth, of a hope that refused to die. They passed the years, and then Herod the Great arrived. Ambitious but astute, he undertook a monumental remodeling. He doubled the size of the temple, it covered with marble white and decorated with gold. According to some stories, when the sun it played shone like a jewel on the hill, it was the spiritual center of Judaism, and it was in their courtyards that Jesus preached, confronted the Pharisees, and announced something unthinkable. There will not be left stone upon stone that will not be thrown down. Decades later, in the year 70 AD, the words were fulfilled. The Roman legions destroyed the temple. Today, only a fragment remains, the Wall of the Lamentations. But, really, was that all there was left? Some they believed that the foundations of the temple still exist, hidden under modern structures. Others come in its ruins, a metaphor, that the true temple now is not built on stone, but in the spirit of every believer. The Second Temple was more than a reconstruction. It was an oasis in half of the desert, lighthouse in the darkness from exile, and his destruction marked not only the end of an era, but the birth of a new promise. For centuries, the science has tried to explain what inexplicable, and many sometimes it has achieved. He has debunked myths, he has revealed frauds, has offered explanations rational to phenomena that were previously considered miraculous. But when faced with certain biblical constructions, something changes. How to explain an ark with perfect dimensions to withstand a global cataclysm, built thousands of years before they existed the rules of the modern naval engineering? How to understand the internal collapse of the walls of Jericho in the exact moment that relates the Bible? How conceive a temple made in complete silence with stones that still today would be difficult to assemble? So what to say of a confusion linguistics so precise that it gave origin to the linguistic diversity of the humanity? Archaeologists, historians, engineers, and linguists, they have offered theories. Some are plausible, others forced, but none of them manages to completely close the questions. And that's where it appears the eternal tension. How far can arrive the science, and where starts the territory of the faith? Maybe the mistake this in wanting to oppose them. Perhaps what the science cannot explain, it does not need to be explained, but contemplated. Because each of these constructions is not just a material work, it is a message, a testimony, a sign. Maybe they are not there to be understood with mathematical precision, but to remind us that there is something beyond what is seen, something that defies formulas, that transcends time, and that still today leaves experts speechless words. From an ark built with faith, up to a tower stopped by the ambition. From walls that fell without weapons to temples that shone like the darling same. Each of these constructions is not just stone, wood, or metal. They are doors toward something deeper, echoes of a story major, testimonies of an interaction between the divine and the human. Science can measure heights, calculate weights, date ruins, but there is something it cannot quantify: the intention, symbolism, the hidden purpose behind each work. And perhaps in that is where their power lies, in what they continue talking to us, even when they no longer exist. Now I ask you, which of these buildings impressed you the most? Do you think we are witnessing miracles, real, or before knowledge, ancient ones that we still do not understand altogether? Comment below your opinion. I want to know what you think. What theory is more convincing to you, or which one mystery still leaves you without breath? And if this trip impacted you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like and share this video with someone who needs to see these stories, because in a world full of noise, there are truths that can only be heard in the silence of the amazement.